Hello, so this is part 2 of the tutorial series where we will be creating this exact hack and slash game step by step in Godot 4. Today we will be adding this player with movement and an animation controller, as well as creating our camera movement and going over the creation of a global script. If you have any questions regarding errors, understanding, or anything at all, then please let me know in the comments and I will be sure to get back to you. Remember that this course is completely free, but if you want to help support me a little bit more, then a link to my Patreon page will be in the description below. Your support truly means the world. Thanks, and remember to subscribe and drop a like to help YouTube push this tutorial and this series to more aspiring game developers. And now, let's begin. Okay, so carrying on where we left off last time in the last episode, we have this tile map with a stage level, a tile map collision, and a little background image. And then we have a lobby level, which is just the same exact thing almost with the two other sprites. It's just maps and collisions, right? That's all we have so far. In this episode, we're going to go and we're going to add a player. We're going to control his animations, create his animations. We're going to add some camera movement, and we're also going to create our global script that we're going to be using all throughout this series. So the first thing we're going to do to get started is we're going to go up here, create a brand new scene, another node, and we're going to call this a character body 2D. Now the character body 2D is the node that we're going to be using for our player. So we can call it our player because this is our player scene. And let's start off by just creating all of the animations. So to do that, we're going to create an animated sprite 2D because everything's going to be done within an animated sprite 2D for this player. We can go over here to our inspector, go to our animation sprite frames, and we can click on new sprite frames. If we click on that, it's going to open up this sprite frames panel here. And what we can do is we can create our animations. So let me go over some of the animations that we're going to use. So first of all, let's create our idle animation. So just like that, IDLE, and then we can go over here to this little grid here. If we click on that, it's going to pop up this file, so we can open up a file, and we can go into our player art over here. And we can go into our idle animations, and for our idle, we're going to end up using 50 by 50, and we're going to end up using idle sprite frame 1 here. And you can see that we have vertical and horizontal. This has four horizontal and 1 vertical. So we can go 1 vertical. You're going to see that it's going to evenly space them out. Then if we click them in order, these are our 4 frames, and make sure you click them in order or else they're going to be way out of order and the animation is going to look a little whack. But this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's 4 frames. If we add 4 frames, you're going to see that it's going to spawn in, and it's going to be our idle animation, right? So if we click on play here, we have an idle animation. Now for our idle animation, we want to make sure we are looping the animation just like that. So make sure this is blue. If it's not, then it's only going to play once, right? And it's not going to loop. So make sure that's blue. But we're going to have more than one idle animation, right? So we need to go and create another animation. This is going to be our weapon idle. So it's going to be the idle, but it's going to have our player holding the sword, right? So if we click on 0 here, it's only going to be 3 frames, but it's vertical 1, horizontal 3. And you're going to see that if we add these, basically the same thing, just one has a sword and one has nothing, right? But now we're going to have to go and create all the other animations, right? So we're going to end up having a run animation, a fall animation, a death animation, and we're going to have the different attacks. So let's start off with our double attack, right? So this is going to be our first actual animation that we're going to create, or I mean, I guess those are actual animations. I don't know what I'm saying, but we're going to go and create our attack animations now by going to our attack folder, 50 by 50. And this one here, it's going to be called this. It's going to be the biggest sprite sheet here. Is going to have 10 frames, but we're going to use 9 of these, right? So we're going to end up starting at the second one because these are almost repetitive frames, so there's kind of no point in having both of them in it. But if we do this, then this is going to be 9 frames, and if we add those, you're going to see what happens, right? It looks very slow, very weird because it's so slow. So to fix that, we can go up here to the FPS and we can say 13, and that's going to speed it up, and it's going to look more like a animation, or more like a real attack, right? And of course this looks funny because it's looping, and an animation that is going to be for attacking, you don't swing the sword this many times, right? You swing it once. So we can go over here to this blue box, we can check it off, and every time we play the animation you can see what happens. It's a double attack. If we go over here, we can go to the next attack, which is going to be an air attack. So if our player is in the air, there's no specific sprite frame for this, so we're going to end up using the attack 01 sprite sheet, which is the exact one that we just used. And we're going to say vertical 1, horizontal 10, but we're only going to use this one, this one, this one, and this one. So we're only going to use the last 4 frames. And this is going to come together once we add them and we turn looping off. And since this is an air attack, we want it to be more slow, so maybe we can do 4 frames a second. And if we click play, you're going to see what happens, right? So it's like if the player is falling from the sky, his sword is already going to be up in this position, right? We'll figure that out when we create our fall animations. But the way the animations are set up, the sword's already going to be in the sky. So this is going to look very clean, and it's going to look very clean in the game, because it's going to it's not going to like glitch into this frame. It's going to ease into that from our other animation. But this is our air attack, as you can see. Just imagine the player falling and swiping as he's fallen to the ground, right? That's the air attack. Then we can go over here and we create the single attack. And the single attack is going to make use of the sprite 0.png right here. We can say vertical 0, and we can rise the horizontal to, is it 6? Yeah, it's 6 frames there, right? So we can click on all 6, make sure they are in order again, add these 6 frames, and we can raise the frames per second, because you're going to see that this looks very, very slow. So maybe we can go with like 15. And you're going to see that that goes faster. Make sure we turn the looping off, and it looks like a one swipe animation. And in my opinion, it looks pretty good. So those are our attack animations and our idle animations. So next, let's go and create our death animation. So death animation, we can click on this grid, come over here, go to dead, go to 50 by 50, and we're going to end up using the dead one sprite sheet here. And this is going to consist of 8 frames. We're going to use all 8 of these here, add them, and of course if it's a dead animation, we don't want it to loop, because why would we want that to loop multiple times? And we can set it to 4 frames a second, so it's a little bit slower, so we can kind of understand what's happening with the player, and it's not like too quick for us to even see if we're, you know, playing the game. Then we can go over here, create a new one. Let's create our fall animations. So our first fall animation is just going to be called fall. We can go to fall 50 by 50, and it's going to be with this fall 0 PNG, and it's only 2 frames, but vertical 1, 2 horizontal. If we click on both of these, you can see that it's a player falling. We want this one to loop, of course, and if we click play, you're going to see how it looks like a player is falling. Now, it doesn't look like the player is falling, really. It just looks like he's waving, but if he had gravity on him and he's fallen, like we do have, or like we're going to add in this episode, then it's going to all come together, right? And if we add another animation, this one is going to be our weapon fall. Now our weapon fall is almost going to be the exact same thing, except we're going to use fall 1 here. And if we go 1 vertical, 2 horizontal, we click on both, you can see that this one has a weapon in his hand, right? He has that sword that from the other animations, he has that sword in his hand, right? Even on the fall. So imagine this and then playing this, right? But it starts in this and it doesn't glitch down like that, because that's not how it works, right? If we are actually in the game. But you can kind of see that if we have how his sword is up here above his head, if we go into the air attack, his sword is up here above his head, right? So as he's falling down, he's going to hold it down, and it's going to be like he's slashing as he's falling. So hopefully that makes a little sense. It'll all make sense when it all comes together. And then we have one more animation, which is just going to be our run animation. And our run animation is going to be 50 by 50, and we're going to end up using for our run animation the run sprite 0 here. And this is going to be 6 frames, 1 vertical and 6 horizontal, just like that. You can kind of see how this looks. That looks good. And then we can create our last animation, which is going to be weapon run. And weapon run is going to create or make use of run sprite 2 here. It's going to be 1 vertical and it's going to be 5 horizontal, just like that. And then those are basically all of the animations complete. So now we're going to move into the movement. To do this, let's first of all save the scene into our scenes folder, our player.tscn. And let's come to our player real quick and add a collision shape 2D, just so we can interact with the world. And we can use this collision, put it down here. This is a makeshift collision. We'll come back, we'll fix it up later, make it look a little bit better, make it fit the character better, but that looks good, right? So over here, it keeps running. We don't want that. We can click on this little back button, or this redo refresh button, and it's going to refresh it. It's going to stop our character from animating here in the editor. And then now we can move on to creating our player movement. So for the movement, we're going to come up here to our player. We're going to add in a brand new script. This is going to be our player.gd. We want to make sure we come down here into our file system and save that script into the right folder. Make sure we save it into the script folder down here. And then right here, this movement here is pretty basic, and it's almost exactly what we're going to use, just because it is a platformer and there's nothing really fancy that we're going to need for our movement. There are here a couple things that I do want to change. One of those being the gravity. I'm going to come up here, completely remove this pre-built gravity, change that to 900 because 900 is a little less. The pre-built gravity is 980, but we'll do 900 because it's a little less and it makes our jump look a little bit better. This will make sense later on whenever we have it as a global script. Up here, we can say constant speed. We can say this to 300. Jump velocity, I like to call this, instead of jump velocity, jump power. And that should be good. And instead of 400, because that's kind of a lot, especially since we just lowered our gravity a little bit, we'll do 350. And we'll see how that looks. We can always come back and we can always change it. Now, down here, the gravity, this is exactly how we want to add the gravity. That's fine. Down here in the input, where we get input and we get the jump, I want to change this jump action press to jump instead of UI accept, and we're going to create these actions here in a minute. And jump velocity, we have to call this jump power now, just like this. Whoa, okay, jump power. And then down here where we get our axis, which is going to return -1 or negative 1 or +1, instead of doing that, we can just call this right and left. And we'll set these up here in just a second, just like that. And then for direction, we have to times this by our new variable speed. And down here, we got to change this to our new variable speed. And if we go up here into our project settings, and we go to input map and we say new action, we can make our right action, a left action, and a jump action. Our jump action is going to be a space bar, and it's also going to be a W, and it's also going to be the up arrow. Left is going to be A, and it's also going to be the left arrow, and then right is going to be D, and it's going to be the right arrow, just like that. And then that should be good for our input. Now, the main thing I want to go over here is controlling our animations, right? So if we go and we play the game, everything should work. If we go to our lobby, click on our lobby level up here, go to our chain and go to our player and instance it, and we throw our player in right here. You're going to see that if we play the scene, our player is going to spawn, he's going to land, and we can move around on the map. And the jump looks good, everything like that looks good. The speed is a little bit quick, so we can turn that down a little bit. But other than that, everything looks good. But we don't have animations, and it's very zoomed out. We'll fix the zoom out problem right here by just adding in a camera 2D. And we can say 2.5, just like that. Just to zoom in our camera a little bit, we can move it in somewhere like this maybe. You can see this circle or this square here, this purple square. That is the outline for our camera, and this is our camera 2D, so it's going to be centered right here. So this is the window that's going to be visible now. If we click F6 to play, you're going to see that it looks a little bit better and we can move around, but our player has no animation. So that is what I really want to go over. That's going to be the complex part. And to do that, we can come down here under our movement slide. We can just call another animation, which is going to be handle movement animation, right? And then we can pass through our direction just so we know which way to face the character, right? To face the player. And then we can say function handle movement animation and grab direction that we pass through, and we can start to set up our animation. Now, to set up our animation, we are going to start by, let's start it off by basic and come up here firstly and create another variable. So the reason I'm going to create this variable is because we are going to need some type of weapon equipped variable, because our player is going to have two states, right? If our player's in the game, it's going to say weapon is equipped. And if we're not in the game, then our player is going to say weapon is not equipped, right? Or if we're on the lobby scene. That's why we have a fall, a weapon fall, a run, a weapon run, right? That's why we have all the different ones for this exact reason. So up here, we can say weapon. We can just say weapon equipped. Our weapon equipped equals a bool value. And then we can set this by just going to create a ready function here. And this later will be a global variable, right? And we're going to go over that here in this episode. But if we create a ready function, if we create a ready function and we say weapon equipped equals to false, we can just say false. So we play the non-weapon animations first, because that's what we're going to work on first. We can come down here and we can say if the weapon equipped is equal to false. So weapon equipped, this is what this little symbol here means. That means, okay, we're checking if this is equal to false. Then we can say, okay, let's see. If the weapon is equal to false, then let's just say animated sprite and play our idle animation. To do that, let's come up here to the top one more time and let's create a onReady variable. This onReady variable is going to be the var to our animated sprite. So we can say animated sprite, and we can say animated sprite equals just our animated sprite 2D, just like that. And then we can come down here and we can say animated sprite dot play our idle animation, just our normal idle animation. And if we go to our lobby scene, click play, you're going to see that we have an idle animation, but nothing really happens because we haven't called anything else, right? So to call everything else, we can come down here and we can say our idle animation is going to be played if our velocity is equal to 0, right? So we can come up here, click enter, and we can say if there is no velocity, right? So that means we have no velocity on our player, then we want our animated sprite to play idle, right? But then we want to say, okay, well, if we do have velocity, right? So if we do have velocity, then we want our animated sprite dot play our run animation, right? Okay, right? So if we go and we click F6 and we play our lobby scene, you're going to see that we have idle, and when we run, we have a running animation. We don't flip our character or anything like that. So to flip our character, we're going to have to toggle our flip to sprite, or toggle to flip our sprite with over the horizontal axis, right? So to do that, we can come in our code and we can say, okay, well, let's toggle flip sprite, right? Our sprite, and we can pass through direction, and we're going to have to create this function, right? So we can say toggle flip sprite and direction equals, well, what do we want to happen in our toggle flip, right? So let's think about it. Well, direction is going to be equal to 1 or -1. If direction is equal to 1, then we're going to be moving right because we get it from this input.getAccess. So we can say, okay, if it's equal to 1, that means we're moving to the right. So we can say if direct is equal to 1, then we want animated sprite dot flip h to equal to false, because we don't want to flip it, right? Because if it's equal to 1, then we're going to be moving right. The default position, or the default direction of our sprite, is facing right. But if direction is equal to -1, then we want our animated sprite dot flip h to equal to true, and now we should flip every time we run a different direction. So if we click on F6 on our lobby level and we play, you can kind of see that our animation does flip, and we do play the running animation, and we do play the idle the moment we come to a stop, which is perfect. But we need some type of jump animation, because if we go one more time at F6 and we jump, you can kind of see it does a weird running animation because our velocity is equal to something. So it's playing the running animation when we're in the air, which isn't good. So to fix that, we can come up to above our velocity here, and we can say if is on the floor, right? So if we are on the floor, then we want to check if the velocity is equal to that, because if we're on the floor, that's the only time we're going to play the run or the idle animation is if we're on the floor. If we're not on the floor, which we can come down here by saying else if is not, or is on floor is equal to false. So we can say with a little exclamation mark is equal if, or so else if we're not on the floor, then we can say animated sprite dot play our fall animation, right? If we click F6 and we play, what's going to happen? Well, we have our running animations, we have our idle animation, and we have a jump animation now. So now we have all of our animations. But real quick, let me come up here. Let's change the speed a little bit so it looks a little bit better. You can kind of see that we have our running animations. We flip the character. We can jump both ways. Come this way, jump. Come this way, jump. And we have every animation that we need, right? But what is this not weapon equipped? What happens if our weapon is equipped? Well, we can say, just right under here, we can say if weapon equipped is equal to true, then we can say, basically copy this word for word, except change up the animations, right? So we want to do the exact same thing, except instead of playing the idle animation, we want to play the weapon idle animation, right? Instead of the run animation, we want to play the weapon run animation. And instead of playing the fall, we want to play the weapon fall animation. Now if we click F6 and we play, you can kind of see that everything's going to be the same because our weapon equipped is equal to false right now, right? But if we come out into our code, come into the ready function and equal it to true, So just one line of code we can change, and you're going to see that now we have a weapon in our hand, and we run weapon, running weapon, jumping weapon, and we have a weapon in our hand. So that is how that works. That is our animation. Now we need to find a way to set our weapon equipped equals true based on what scene that we are in. So to do that, we can come and create a global script. So real quickly, to create a global script, we can come up to File, New Script, and we can just name this global.gd. Now this is going to be basically like a dictionary of nodes. That is all that's going to be within this, is a dictionary of just variables. So the very first line of code, the only line of code for today in our global script, is going to be var player weapon equipped. And we're not even going to set this to true or false. We're just going to say it's a bool value. And that's our entire script for now. But later on, there's going to be about 20 of these variables here. And currently, this is not a global script because we haven't auto-loaded it. So we can come up here to project settings, auto loads, click on this little folder, find the script, which is global.gd. And we can add this as a global variable just like that. And you can see global variable is enabled. We can close this out. Now we can access this variable from every other script in the game. So we'll figure out what we want to do with this here in just a minute by creating our script for our lobby scene and then creating a script for our stage scene. So to create a script for our stage scene, because we want to, for our lobby scene first, because our player is going to have its own camera. The player currently doesn't have a camera, but we're going to have our own camera for when we're in the stage scene so we can follow the player. In the lobby scene, we're just going to have this still 2D camera. So basically, when we're in the lobby scene, we want to make sure the player's camera is disabled, and we want to make sure this camera is enabled. So to do that, we can go into our player first, and let's create his camera. So let's say, okay, player, camera 2D, and we're going to want to set up the zoom. We're going to want to zoom this in a little bit. We can go to our stage scene over here, instance our player into the scene, and we can kind of see how big his camera is. If we save this scene, we can come over here. We can see that the camera is about this big, which is, that looks good. Maybe we need it a little bit smaller, so maybe we can do 2.3, and that looks good. Maybe yeah, so maybe not a little smaller, maybe a little bigger because it was a little tight, but that looks good. Okay, now our player camera, we want it to have limiting on it, because if we click play now, it's going to run around good, it's going to look good, but we can just go all the way off the map and we can see everything, stuff that we don't want to see. So to do that, we can go to a stage level. Let's go through this here really quickly because it is pretty simple. If we go to our marker 2D, we added this marker 2D, we can say, okay, we want the player's camera to stop at this point. We can go to transform, we can grab this X value here, go to our player scene, go to our camera, go to our limiting, go to left, and paste in that number. Then we can go to our stage here. And this is going to be, let's get our top, which is going to be somewhere around here, right? So maybe we can go about here, so we can't see too much over the grass, but maybe we want to see a little bit over the grass. Maybe we can go with like this, right? We can copy our Y value, come back to our player, and set the top to that number. Then we can go back to our stage level, take our marker 2D, bring it over to the right, and on the right we can say something like this, right? So maybe 891, and then we can go to our player, set our right to 891, and then we can grab this, bring it down here to the ground. Maybe we want to see about half of the ground, right? Something like this, right? And then we can grab this number, this Y number, and then we can go back to our player, set this at the bottom, enter that, and then we can come here to our stage level, delete our marker 2D, and now if we play in the stage level, you're going to see what happens, that everything looks pretty good, and we have a working camera that stops at the edges, right? So, okay, simple camera setup. Now, what I do want to go over is I'm going to create a script for this stage level, and we have to make sure that we get the player script. We have to make sure that we get the player's camera, so we have to access the player, and we also have to access our global script. So to do this, we can go up here into our ready function, and we just want to get our player by going up here and saying on ready var player, which is going to be equal to just at player dot camera. We can name this here player camera, just like that. Get our player. Then we can say, okay, well, player camera, if in the ready function. So whenever this scene is loaded for the first time, we want to say player camera dot enabled is equal to true. And then we want to go to our player, and off of base, off of normal, we can just set our camera to disabled. But I guess it doesn't really matter. It wouldn't really matter if you have that enabled or not, because we're going to set it up in the lobby scene as well. And then in the lobby scene, we want to come over here to our lobby scene, and we can add in a new script. We want to basically copy our stage script here for the most part. Just copy this, go to our lobby, paste it, because it's going to be about the exact same thing. We want, instead of it being true, then we want to say false, because the lobby has its own camera that's going to be enabled. So if we click play on the lobby, you're going to see that we have a still camera, right? The player's camera is disabled. But if we go to our stage level and we click F6, then this plays, right? Because it automatically sets the players to true. If we go to our stage scene and we take this here away, you're going to see what happens is that if we play our stage scene, it's going to be all messed up, because our camera on our player is set to disabled, right? So we do need this line of code, and that's how that works. And then if we play our stage now, you're going to see that it does work. Now, one more thing I want to do is in our ready function, based on what scene we're in, I want to set that global variable. So we're in the stage scene here, so we can say global dot player weapon equipped is going to be equal to true, because we are in the stage scene. But if we are in our lobby scene, then whenever the lobby scene loads in, we can say player dot weapon is equal to false. And to set this up within our player, we can go into our player script. Instead of having this ready function here and having this variable here, we can just grab the variable in our global script down here within our handle movement. So we can say var weapon equip the variable that is already in our game, right? Var weapon equipped is going to just be equal to the global dot player weapon equipped. So it's going to equal whatever, based on whatever scene we're in, right? Because it's going to change. This only changes based on whatever scene we're in, and this here is going to equal that. So it's going to equal whatever scene we're in. So now if you see, if we go to our lobby scene, we click F6 in our lobby scene, we have no weapon, right? And all the animations work. If we go to our stage scene, click F6, we automatically have a weapon in our hand without having to do anything manually to change that within the code, right? So it automatically does it based on whatever scene is loaded. So hopefully everything came together well for you in your game. Hopefully you are caught up and you are ready to go on to episode 3 of this series. I want to thank you so much for watching. Hopefully that you've been able to learn something about player animation or player movement maybe, but the player movement wasn't much, but the animation was pretty good. Global variable is pretty important, especially when we go into future episodes and we use that a lot more. But hopefully this was a helpful tutorial and you were able to learn something. Let me know in the comments down below if you need any help on anything at all. Thank you so very much, and until next time, stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye.